as we are getting into this, and my apologies as I do have to beautiful. Do have to fix something, but here we go. This morning in the top left-hand corner of Babylon, we have the Canadian Protoss player representing Team Basilisk. It is a Trigger. And spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of Babylon, we have his opponent. We have the Brazilian Zerg player representing the Cranky Ducklings. It is Erik. El Patito himself. Oh my god. Going for a pool first opener, going for a 15 hatch, but the hatchery is going to be across the map. Oh, let's go. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe this was a 14 pool into this 15 hatch. The drone is across the map and the hatchery is thrown down here in the natural base of Trigger. Trigger sees this, he knows this, and he's going to be pulling some of these boys. 2 probes though is not going to be enough. But I appreciate this from Trigger. He should be keeping that probe across the map, should be pylon blocking the would-be natural base of Erik. Thankfully for Erik, he's going to have wings on the way. Here we go. The Zealot is being chronoed out as we speak. We have really minimal DPS being dealt to this hatchery, actually. So this hatchery is going to finish. We'll see if 2 probes and 1 Zealot have enough DPS to really keep this hatchery down. Meanwhile, the Lings have arrived. They shoo away the probe, and the hatchery for Erik is thrown down. Lings are flooding across the map. We do have a full wall off here set up from Trigger. But again, this hatchery should complete. It's going to be close. We're going to have a second Zealot coming out momentarily in a couple of seconds. There's that full wall off with the pylon. The Lings have arrived. The hatchery does get cancelled in time. Whew. I was really worried. It does get cancelled in time. The wall is no longer a wall, and the Lings, oh, they're going to be able to almost get a surround on that Zealot. Ooh. Trigger has to be very careful here as the drone does survive, and Erik could go for another hatchery in the main if he wants to, but looks like he will not. He'll back off for now. Ooh. Okay. He tries to go for a gas steal. Oh my god. It's beautiful, Bobby. It's beautiful. The drone will back off in the end. We do have both of those Zealots that were made earlier just rushing across the map alongside this Adept. This is the kind of scary thing about early pool timings, is that you do force the Protoss player to make an abundance of units early on, and things can get really scary as a result. With the power of Queens and all these Lings, though, we should have enough to deal with this. Erik is about to have his second Queen coming out. There we go. The Queens are brought forward. Queens are brought forward. The Lings as well, but this is getting a bit out of hand. We have 3 Adepts now for Trigger. Jesus, the amount of DPS we have here is insane. Oh god, it's going to be looking to pick off some of these drones. The drones will all barely survive. We are threading shades in towards the main base, but no, that's where the Lings are headed. Oh, Erik just microing his heart out here with these Queens. The Zealots are going to be going down, but now the Lings are going to be forced to back off as the Adepts do commit. 1 drone goes down. We're going to get a second. We're going to get a third. Oof, even a 4th. Honestly, really good damage done here by Trigger. He's able to maintain his worker lead. Sure, he lost Zealot and he lost the Depths, but you know, they don't really have too much uses here at this stage of the game, so a great way to trade them out. Oh, and this is looking like Glaives. Oh boy, the Oracle is going to be going across the map. We have a Twilight Council as a follow-up. No Forge. I'm feeling Glaive Adepts here from Trigger. We have seen this before. We'll see if Erik can deal with this as he's going to be rushing into his lair. I say rushing, but I mean, we are at almost a 5-minute mark. Oh! Trigger getting a little bit overzealous. Gets 1 drone, but takes a lot of hull damage as a result. Fire Council is done. Gateways are on the way. 4 gates in total, and there is that Glaive Adept that we were talking about. So I do think that this is a pretty common reaction from this position, and Erik, he hasn't been able to scout this yet, but I'm sure he's aware, and I love this. We have Overlord speed on the way. We've seen Erik do this before, specifically against this build, specifically against Trigger, actually, a couple of weeks ago. If you remember, as Trigger went for Glaive Adepts, we had a drop into his main base. I think it was a Baneling drop, but we could be seeing a Link drop instead. There we go. Wait, it's not even going to be Links, it's going to be the Queens. The Queens are going to be elevated into these drop lords. We're going to be taxing them across the map, and Erik is going for his own all-in. Now, how will this compare against Glaive Adept? So that's the question. As Erik is zooming into the main base, he's going to be able to get a full scout. Does get eyes on the Adepts. He's fully aware of them. God, and that is a lot of Adepts. We're still a couple of seconds away from +1 melee finishing. The Adepts do commit to the shade in towards the third base, but there is nothing here to kill. we haven't been droning, Papi. There's no drones. And the Lings, they ignore the Adepts. They go across the map instead. What do we have at the third base to defend? We're going to be warping into 4 Adepts defensively back at home. Oh, it will finish just in time. Well, the Queens are going to be able to power down this Oracle. Lings are going to be threatening that main base as well. Queens are about to be dropped on the other side of the wall. Meanwhile, the Lings back at home are going to be dealt with. +1 melee is now done. But were we premature with the Lings across the map? That's the thing. Like, there are just so many Adepts, and Lings just don't trade well against them at all, even with +1 melee. I'm sure Erik wants to go up against Link of all things, not Glaives. We're going for some drop lord harass. Let's go, Papi, let's go. No, but the Queens will be going down. They cannot transfuse. Oh my god, we get a clutch transfuse on the Overlord, but it's not going to be enough. Oh, it just barely is. Oh, we live, Papi, we live. For how much longer, as the Adepts shaded behind the mineral line as well. They're not killing too many workers, but they do deny some mining time. Erik is really struggling to get into his own aggression, as the Adepts just do not stop. Finally, they're all going to be cleaned up. And finally, Erik, he can focus on his own army. We have Roach Speed about to finish up. Erik saturating his third base as we speak. But Trigger is about to get into Disruptors. Robotics Bay is on the way. We don't have any Glaive Adepts anymore, so Erik could maybe try to break the third base, but it looks like Erik is more interested in droning instead. We have a 4th on the way. We're saturating our 3rd, taking more gases, +2 melee, and a Bailey Nest. Erik is getting into a longer game. Okay. Interesting. We don't really get a lot of macro games out of Erik. But I guess he's kind of forced into it, to be fair. As the main base was scattered, the Robotics Bay has been confirmed. I believe we may have seen it researching as well. Tis possible as we are getting into Colossus production. Erik, though, after saturating his third base, he is amassing another army. Good Catch is able to take down these Adepts across the map. 4th base is on the way. This is spotted by Erik.
Under attack.
He is fully aware. But can he stop it? Especially with Colossi. Colossus defensively, honestly, are quite powerful. They have limited kind of kiting range, of course, just because, you know, we are defensively back at home. But Erik is going to be looking to try and potentially punish his bases. As I say that, Erik is still droning. I'll be honest, I don't remember I think the last time I saw Erik with more than like 70 workers was in the ZvT against Vindicta. on Gresswan, if you remember. Like, Erik, he doesn't macro too often against Protoss, but we're getting into a longer game. Hive is on the way. Let's go, Papi. Oh my, this is a side of Erik that I haven't seen before. In this matchup specifically, like, I've seen late game Erik against Terran, sure, but not so much against Protoss. Not in a long time. I'm being brought back to a couple of years ago when Erik was playing against Skytoss, playing against Starduck, or practicing against Starduck. Back when Starduck actually played the game. Smooch, Papi, smooch. Oh, but here we go. Erik has droned up to 75. The Hive is still on the way. Rocks are being knocked down, and Erik wants to potentially threaten this fourth base, but with the Colossi defensively back at home, yeah, Erik won't be able to break in. We see him threatening the army. Trigger respects it. Will back off. Bailing run by headed towards that third base. Oh, do we have a reaction at a Trigger? We do not. Oh, we do pull the boys just in time. The workers will be saved. And Erik will back off from here. The Hive is done. Vipers are on the way, and the Vipers are a sure way to shut down these Colossi. And I respect this from Trigger. I do think that Erik wants Trigger to push into him. Erik wants to fight out on the map on creep. And I think Trigger is aware, so he's going to back off. He throws down a wall of cannons, shield batteries. He's going to be more defensive here on 4 bases. Templar Archives are on the way for Archons for Storm. He's even pre-spread as well. Trigger's like, come at me. And Erik's like, no. So because of this, Trigger is giving Erik full map control. And to be fair, again, Erik isn't known for his late game, but despite that, he's taking a 5th base. We're getting to Aspire, go to Hydrogen, Adrenal Glands. Like, he is taking advantage of the freedom that is provided to him. Erik is about to max out. And the question is, how much energy do we have on this Viper? Not a lot, to be honest. We've got a Spell in us. We have an Abduct. But we need more time. We need more energy. We need more Vipers. We have 2 Vipers out right now. And these Vipers are going to be so crucial in dealing with this army. And even the Vipers may not be enough because we now have High Templar for feedbacks. As we do see Trigger setting up here to counterattack. We do have a warp in of Zealots at the 5th base of Erik. Is going to be forced to react. This will create an opening as Trigger is pushing through the center of the map with 3 Colossi and so many High Templar. Storm about to finish up in 10 seconds as well. Ooh, the Prism will fall, but we had to Parasitic Bomb, which means we have that much less energy for these Colossi. Uh-oh. And it looks like Erik has recognized... never mind. Storms are going to be landing. Erik can't engage. He's going to be going into Hydro Lurker Viper. He's trying to transition into Hydro Lurker Viper. Meanwhile, Trigger going for the Sky Toss. A bit of a counterattack being set up here by Erik again. He needs to get rid of the Roaches. He needs to replace those Roaches with Hydras instead. Stalker run by being set up on the left-hand side as well. Both players just skirmishing here, looking to refine their armies. Just like how Erik wants to get rid of his Roaches, I'm sure Trigger will be content with getting rid of some of these Stalkers. Oh, but Erik is out of position right now. We do see Trigger pushing forward. 5th base will go down. The 6th base goes down as well. Trigger is going to be losing some units, but his economy is still standing strong. Meanwhile, once again, Erik, he needs to get rid of these roaches. Just going to be harassing with them, pulling the army of Trigger towards that left-hand side instead. Yo, can we even get the Nexus? This got out of hand really quickly. The Nexus will go down. The Trigger is looking for a fight. Lurker range is done. Oh my god. Oh my god. Jesus. Did you see that one volley? Almost every single Stalker goes down. Half of them deep in the red. But the Lurkers have been confirmed. This Trigger rotates around to the right-hand side. Erik, a little bit slow to respond, is forced to cancel his base. When the first carrier is about to reveal itself. And it's not really about the main armies. They're kind of posturing with each other, but Trigger is just taking full advantage of his map control, going for another run by another counterattack. Storms are going to be forcing Erik back. Not able to push in. Oh no! Oh, Jesus. And this Observer is doing so much here for Trigger as the carriers move forward. Up. Nice yoink on that Observer. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, the hatchery of Erik is going down, and this is getting dangerous. Erik is stuck on 4 bases. He hasn't been able to get a 5th up for a very long time. He's been trying desperately to expand, to double expand even, time and time again, but every single time Trigger is there to stop him, and Erik is starving out. We can see he's struggling to remax. He has a bank, but not the best bank. He doesn't really have a lot of gas to work with. The gases are the big thing that's holding him back. We need a base. Meanwhile, Trigger is getting his own 5th up and running. 6th even. Jesus. And as Trigger is ahead in those bases, I do think that he just has so much more momentum in this game. He's still asserting himself here with his ground army, even without all the carriers. He's pushing on forward. The Storms blanket the Lurkers. Brood Lords are trying to come in as well. Oh god, but we have the feedbacks and we don't have any abducts remaining. We're going to be able to force this army back. Erik, if he's able to get one of these bases up and running, then he can keep going, but oh god, Trigger is just fighting so well. He's just trading so well. No, the Corruptors are going to be going down, and with the death of the Corruptors, there's nothing to stop the carriers. That's a kill, not a cancel on the 5th base. Erik trying to go for a counterattack, and hey, he's doing some damage, to be fair, but there's nothing to stop this Skytoss army. No spores, a couple of queens, a couple of transfuses. But alas, every Corruptor goes down. Trigger, here in the late game, looking to be the more powerful opponent, is going to be able to break through the army. GG gets called, and Trigger will take game number 1. Aye, aye, aye. GG, well played. Yeah, pretty interesting dynamic there. Like, obviously we saw Trigger's win condition was just to starve out Erik, was just to deny base after base, not allowing a 5th hatchery for Erik to ever get up and running. Erik was doing well for himself, you know, establishing an anti-ground army, but that transition to Skytoss, Erik just wasn't really ready for it. I say he wasn't ready for it. He had the tech for it, but he didn't have the economy. He didn't have the gas specifically to transition into more Corruptors, into more Vipers. Again, it does take a lot of gas to get into that, and alas, that was something that Erik was lacking. And now we're going to be getting into game number 2. Let's go. here we go. Spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of Dragon Scales, we have the Canadian Protoss player. One of the best Protosses in all of North America, representing Team Basilisk. It is Trigger. And spawning in the top left-hand corner of Dragon Scales, we have as opponent, we have the Brazilian Zerg, representing the Cranky Ducklings. Currently down in this series, but not out. It is Erik. Here we go. Yo, I see Kaido in the chat. Yo, you'd like Trigger. Trigger is the North American Max Packs. There you go. If you're a fan of Max Packs, you're probably a fan of Trigger as well. As Trigger is ahead in this series, has been able to survive the aggression of Erik, at least in game number 1. Can he do it again? Can he do it in game number 2? This time Erik going for his 15 hatch, 15 pool opener. Something a little bit more standard, quote unquote standard. As last game he went for a pool first into a hatch block, if you recall, into a proxy hatch. So yeah, Erik is going to be calming down a little bit here. Again, Erik, he can play late game against Skytoss. We've seen it before on this channel. But specifically Royal Blood, I feel like is a really rough map for that. The rush distance is quite small. It can be quite difficult to get that 5th or even 6th base up and running. As we saw, Erik was having a really hard time expanding. But now we're on Dragon Scales, the second smallest map in the map pool. You know, it's the rush distance is quite short here on Dragon Scales. Not as short as Neo Humanity, of course, but short nonetheless. So I do kind of favor Erik a little bit more in this position, kind of winding it all back. We had a really interesting dynamic where Trigger went for Glaive Adepts in the mid game, and Erik was trying to go for a Ling Queen all-in with Dropper Lords as well, but he wasn't able to pull it off. He was forced to turn back around and stay at home because of how aggressive Trigger was, and I do kind of like that idea. I do appreciate Trigger maybe trying to turn the tables and be in the face of Erik early on to kind of force him to back off and force a longer game. I do think that Trigger can thrive in that longer game. As let's go, Papa, we're going into Overlord speed. Erik is one of the few players out there that consistently gets Overlord speed for the reasons you may not be aware of. So from here, I imagine we're going to be getting to a fast lair as well. And this isn't just for scouting purposes. It helps. Definitely it helps. But the reason why that Erik makes this upgrade worth it, typically this is an inefficient upgrade because you can typically scout early on with slow overlords anyway. Typically you don't need overlord speed to scout and to figure out what's going on. But Erik typically gets a lair later on down the road, and he uses Dropper Lords to great effect, whether it's harassing or even sending queens across the map to spread creep, or some other kind of uses as well. So yeah, we'll see how he's able to pull that off, as we do have the Adept getting across the map. Oh, 2 drones will go down. Good start for Trigger. There's that lair that we were talking about. Lair is on the way. And with this, that does give Erik access to Dropper Lords. Now that he has Overlord speed, it does become a more natural transition for him. His first Overlord is going to be going down. Erik back at home, taking the rest of his gases. Ooh, is actually going to be going for all 4 gases and a fast Roach Warren behind this as well. My god, a 4-minute Roach Warren very early on here. Meanwhile, Trigger is getting into a more standard game, is going for his Oracle opener, going for a Void Ray just to shut down some of those Overlords. But his Oracle is looking to deal some harassing damage across the map. The Spores just now starting, but we do have 2 queens in the main. Queens will shoo away this Oracle. It will be able to get a Revelation off at the natural and will confirm the timing of that Roach Warren. And with the Roach Warren finishing, we are just diving into Roach speed immediately. We'll see what else Erik does from here. I also just like considering the kind of player that Erik is, I really appreciate that we did get a Void Ray as well. Chat to the turtle. But I appreciate that we got a Void Ray just because I think Trigger is now aware that Erik loves Drop Lord play. After what, 3-4 weeks of playing against Erik. I'm sure he's aware of his strengths and weaknesses. As the oracles are dipping in towards the main base, the queen's a little bit out of position. There are oracles, sure, but we need more than that. So 2 more drones go down. Oh boy, and yeah, from here, I'm curious to see if Erik is going to be committing to a push. Like, he's droned up to 63, around 60-ish workers is definitely a respectable amount. I would expect a more standard player to go into a roach all-in from this point, just amass roaches and look to max out on roaches. But Erik is not that predictable. He can be a little bit harder to read, so we'll see what he goes for, as he's going to be sending out his overseers across the map, scouting every inch of Trigger's bases. Getting an eye on the composition. Trigger staying on a low worker count. I love it. The contamination on charge. Let's go. Charge is going to be delayed. And again, keep an eye on that drone count of Erik, because it stopped at 62. And we have 6 more overlords on the way. Yep, Erik is looking to max out on roaches. He's looking to hit a strong timing with +1 range, with link speed. We have tunneling claws on the way. Oh my god. Okay. You have my attention, Erik. This is what I mean. I feel like a standard Zerg player here would just all in off of pure roaches. But Erik, he's got layers to it. He's got burrow, he's got tunneling claws. We have a Baneling nest being thrown down as well, as Erik is moving out across the map with his army. Boy, we'll see if we can find some damage here, as we have Archon's shield battery and an overcharge ready for this. Erik's just going to try and kite his heart out against these slow lots. Oh, and because they are slow, Erik is able to kite well, but outside of that, he is forced back. What kind of detection do we have here for Trigger? We have an observer coming out here towards the 3rd base. We have disruptors already being produced as well. Now, if these roaches are able to bypass this one observer, then there is a lot of potential here for Erik. Oh, but the the Oracle does catch the roach run by. Does force him back for the time being. We do see the borrower is revealed. He's going to be going across the map. The observer is with the main army. The natural is exposed. Oh, but there's a cannon. Oh, there's a cannon in position. Trigger, how does he know? How does he know to prepare for something like this? Again, I do think that it just comes down to experience playing against Erik. I do think that he's aware that Erik is just constantly going for all these different twists and turns. Erik is going to be denied entry into the natural. Trigger getting his 4th base up and running. Erik just droning as hard as he can behind this. Going into Lingbane Roach Ravager. Pretty solid unit composition overall. As the roaches once again are looking to trickle on in. I mean, this 3rd base is exposed, but we're throwing down more cannons. Yo, we're aware. Oh, but it doesn't even matter. The roaches, they just run past the cannons. They head towards the mineral lines in the main and in the natural. Probes are going to be going down. Meanwhile, the main armies do bounce off each other, but these roaches are doing a great job here. And because cannons are stationary, we can burrow as well to avoid these zealots. We have the revelation. The roaches are being cleaned up. Eight probes went down, which is some nice damage, but ideally would have liked a little bit more. God! As the Novas are going to be connecting the first 2. Not too bad here for Trigger. Once again. Oh god, no! Last second split is going to minimize some of those losses. Only 2 roaches go down. But Erik is still hurting. The Banelings are rolling on 4. They will connect with the Zealots. The Disruptors coming in from behind. One of them will go down for free. Oof. But the Novas are looking a little bit too good. Trigger, his main army, is looking too powerful as well. The Zealots rock up. The amount of Archons that we have is insane. And Trigger is rushing across the map as we speak. Erik just doesn't really have too much to speak of to stand against this. Ravagers are going down. They are isolated from the main army. Roaches are coming out to reinforce as well, but... oh no. Thankfully, we do snipe that Disruptor in time. But Erik has to give up this hatchery. Triangular third will go down. We have Ravagers on the way. Erik does have a decent bank. He's going to Lings, but oh no. No! The Overlords! Oh. 6 Overlords go down. To be fair, I think that was 4. 4 Overlords go down. I think 2 died earlier to the Void Ray. But again, Trigger has the map control. He's going to be able to rotate over towards the center base. And alas, Erik is on his last legs. Oh, have a little bit of friendly fire from that Disruptor. But alas, only killing a Zealot here or there. We do have the Roach Ravager pushing on forward. Ah, God. But against this kind of army, I don't know how well it can really do. Banelings do connect with those Archons, though. The Roach Ravager, they should be able to clean everything else up. Where is the Gateway army? The reinforcements have not arrived. Nice target firing on that Disruptor as well. Erik does have some momentum. But pushing up a ramp into Disruptors is never a wise thing to do. Erik backs off. He did trade well towards the end, but look at the worker counts. That's the problem. Our economy, Erik's economy, is just in shambles. We lost so many workers earlier. We lost our bases as well. Erik down to 56 drones. Meanwhile, Trigger happily getting his 5th base up and running. 4th fully saturated. We do have a bit of a Roach counterattack being set up, which can do some damage. But the downside of Roach run-bys is that it does take longer to clean up a mineral line compared to a Baneling run-by. Oh, and here we go. The Novas, they go off on the Ravagers, and that may just be it. Biles will connect, but these Banelings will not finish. Trigger can just keep on moving from here. He gets on top of the army. The Roaches across the map get cleaned up. GG gets called, and Trigger will take the series 2-0. GG. Oh. A pretty intense series, but I do really like the little things that Trigger did in game 2, and like I feel like if I asked him, he'd probably confirm that like going for the Void Ray opener makes so much sense against Erik, just to clear out these Overlords, just to make sure that again there's no drop lord potential available from Erik. Likewise, getting cannons set up at the natural base as well. There's really no reason to get cannons unless you believe borrowed Roaches are like potentially something to be afraid of. So again, time and time again, Trigger was there anticipating the moves of Erik. Wasn't necessarily scouting these things. He was just blindly preparing for them instead, and yeah, it worked out quite well here for Trigger. GG, well played.